So this first reading is from Proverbs chapter 2 and verses 1 to 11. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose way of life is blameless. For he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you.
Thank you, Dave. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul is writing to the Corinthian church about the trials of life, about the lack of understanding that he has, about what's going on and why it's happening and how it's happening and what kind of God is up to in that, about the brokenness of the world that he sees all around him in the way that things are happening. I guess it resonates, doesn't it, with us in these days. And then at the start of the next chapter, chapter 5, just a few verses in, he writes this: we live by faith, not by sight. A simple statement, and yet so profound. And as we know and are experiencing at the moment, life is full of challenges and difficulties and complications. And perhaps we've got big questions that are in our minds. Who are we supposed to be in these days? Why are all these things happening? Where am I supposed to go? And what am I supposed to do in response to all that we are seeing around us? And life has always, of course, been uncertain from one day to the next. But certainly it feels to me as if that uncertainty has increased in the last few months. Why is all of this happening? What is God doing in it? What am I supposed to do in response to it? And a bit like the poem mentions, we're kind of searching for a light or a known way. We're looking for enlightenment and knowledge to know which way to go. We want to know and we want to understand for ourselves. If only we knew and understood more, then maybe we would feel better. We'd rather see for ourselves and know for ourselves, really, wouldn't we, if we're honest? And if only we could see and understand, then I'm sure that would give us strength and comfort. That would give us peace and hope if we just knew and understood a bit more. There was a few years ago, I was on a holiday with a Crusader class, as they were called then, Urban Saints these days, in Wales. And we went for a walk, and the walk went through this long tunnel. And the tunnel had a turn in it. And it meant there was a point in the tunnel where it was literally completely pitch black. There was nothing behind us at all and nothing in front of us. It was one of the strangest experiences I've had. And we really would have been helpful just to be able to see and know and understand where we were walking, where the walls were and where we were going, but we couldn't see anything. We just had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And suddenly, after a little while, we began to see the tiniest light in the distance, and we realized that we were heading in the right direction. We live by faith, not by sight. We see it in Abraham's life. In Hebrews 11 it says this: Abraham, when called, obeyed and went even though he did not know where he was going. I don't know about you, but a lot of the time I'm not sure about where I'm going in these days. And also a little further down in Hebrews 11, it makes it clear that he didn't know how God would save his own son from his hand when he was up on the mountain, ready to sacrifice him. But here's the question for us this morning. As we think about that up relationship with God, who would you rather knew, you or God? Who would you rather knew, you or God? I know in my life that if I had known what God knew about a number of things in my own life, I would not have followed him. If I knew where some of the decisions that he was making for me were going to lead, I'm quite sure I would have run the opposite direction like Jonah. I certainly would never have come anywhere near Dereham. Sorry, that was just a bad joke. No, we are very blessed to be here. And the poem reminds us, thanks to Andrew and Tricia for reading that poem. The poem, by the way, is apparently very famous. I got in terrible trouble with Lynn Burks for not having heard of it before. So sorry, Lynn, for letting you down with my poem knowledge. Apparently it was given to George the Sixth in 1939 by his 13-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. You might now know her as our current queen. And he quoted it in his Christmas broadcast that year. Popularly, the poem is known as The Gate of the Year, but the title Minnie herself gave it is simply God Knows. And God knows is interesting, isn't it? It's a phrase that's used these days to mean no one knows. It's used blasphemously in some senses, but it's used to kind of mean, oh, no one knows that. People use those words, God knows. There is so much that we don't know, that we can't know, and that we won't know, but God knows. So Minnie writes, heart, be still. What need our little life, our human life to know if God has comprehension? Such an important question. If God really, truly does know, why do I need to know? If I'm walking by faith, not by sight, I don't need to see. And so Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. Know that he is God and that he knows, and that is enough for us. I mean, he also writes this, in all the dizzy strife of things both high and low, God hideth his intention. Reminds me of these words from Luke chapter 10. At that time, Jesus, full of joy through the Holy Spirit, said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. All things have been committed to me by my Father, he says. No one knows who the Son is except the Father, and no one knows who the Father is except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. God chooses what to hide, chooses what to reveal. He chooses what I should and shouldn't know, and will and won't know. He makes those decisions in his relationship with me, and I can be assured I know everything I need to know to be able to follow him closely. And Minnie writes, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be better to you than light and safer than a known way. How do we find the hand of God? Jeremiah 6:16 was the main key verse of the Fresh Streams conference this year. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. How do we find the hand of God? We go and we look and we ask and we seek him. And we see this great description in the passage that Dave has just read from Proverbs 2. I just skip through some of the phrases here as we ask the question of how do we find the hand of God so that we know that we're walking with the one who knows, even if we don't know ourselves. Well, here's some phrases from this passage. Accept his words. Store up his commands. Turn your ear to wisdom. Apply your heart to understanding. Focus our ears and our hearts onto him. Call out, it says, for insight. Cry aloud for understanding. That's to do with our prayer life, and that we can cry out to him and call to him to lead us and help us to see and understand all that we need to. Verse 4, look for it as silver, search as hidden treasure. That's about our heart and how desperate we are to know God better, to hear his voice and to go the way he calls us to go. Then, verse 5 says, then you will understand, it says. But that's not the end of that phrase. Then you will understand the fear of God. And the second part of that verse, and you will find the knowledge. But not necessarily the knowledge about what's going on, but the knowledge of God. And that's the key. That's what we need in these days. Not to know where we're going and to know all the details of what's happening, but to know and understand the fear of God, to find the knowledge about him, to know him better and lean into him more. Because verse 6, it's the Lord who gives wisdom, knowledge, understanding. All those things are found in him. And he chooses what to hide and what to share. Verse 7, it's the Lord who gives success for the upright and is a shield to the blameless. And he does that through Jesus on the cross, causing us to be able to be blameless before him. Verse 8, it's the Lord who guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Many knew he is better than light, and he is safer than a known way. He is all that we need in these days. And so verse 9, then you will understand what is right, just, and fair. Again, not understand everything that's happening and all the details of that, but understand what is right, just, and fair. What God is asking of you and requiring of you. You will be able to find every good path, as the verse says. The verse we read earlier, the good path from Jeremiah 6:16. Verse 10, wisdom will enter your heart. Knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. And verse 11, discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Understanding doesn't come from seeing. It comes from having faith in God. If only we could see, we think that would give us strength. If we understood, then we'd be comforted, we'd have peace, and we'd have hope. No, that's not where those things are found. If only we had true faith in God, then he would give us strength and comfort and peace and hope. As we lean into him and trust him, those things become known to us through him. Not because we know the details or the information, but because we know him and we know that he knows all that is needed. They come from the fact that we know he sees even when we don't. In a moment, Trevor's going to come and read Proverbs 3, and Dave's going to speak a little more about the other two verses. But I just want to read, as I finish this part, Psalm 131. Perhaps these are our words to God as we consider this situation. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have calmed and quietened myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore.
Our second reading is from Proverbs 3, chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep your commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. And now Dave's going to carry on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Trevor. I hope you're all doing all right at home, and you're managing to furnish yourselves with cups of tea and coffee as appropriate. You know, in child development, there's a stage when children think that their parents and or teachers know everything. And it's quite cute, isn't it, when a small child comes home and is amazed by the knowledge that they've learned from their teacher, or if you hear one child telling another child something that their parents have taught them. And as time goes on, this transitions into thinking that they know everything. So firstly, it's the parent and the teacher that knows, and then it becomes the child that knows everything. And that later stage obviously can last a lifetime for some people, and is not cute, you know. But as Proverbs 3 begins, it is the Lord's teaching that we are encouraged to hold on to. Don't forget what he has taught you. Keep this teaching in your hearts. This coronavirus pandemic has shown us that we really have no idea what tomorrow will bring. And we cannot know that, can we? Only God knows. It doesn't mean that planning ahead is a bad idea or anything like that. It's just that, as the poem says, it's that the years ahead are dim to our eyes, but so clear to God. So for us, the thing to do is simply to hold on to what he says. And according to Proverbs 3, when we do this, it adds peace and prosperity to our lives. So as I continue talking about this, is there anything that God has said to you through his word that has brought you peace? You can maybe have a conversation with someone about that later on today. What peace has God brought me through his word? Have a chat with those around you about it. I mean, you can do that now, but if you do, you'll miss some of the rest of this talk. So maybe a bit later. So this first verse that I've been given to talk about starts off with this phrase, or these words: God knows. God knows. He does, you know. God really does know. He knows all and he sees all. Psalm 139 verse 1 says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me." God knows you. There is nothing that escapes his knowledge. Nothing about you he is not aware of or is confusing to him. Psalm 147 verse 5 says, "His understanding is limitless." He is amazing, yet kind of difficult for our limited minds to comprehend. So who better to learn from than God himself? Who else knows everything? In Titus 2 and verse 12, it says that his grace teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright and godly lives in this present age. So because God knows, his will is best. He desires for us to know him, to have a deep and meaningful relationship with him, to live for him and show others just how wonderful he is. And he helps us in all of that. And he teaches us to do that. But sometimes, like stubborn children, we think we know best, don't we? Well, maybe I'm just talking about myself, you know. Sometimes our pride can stop us being willing to listen to the advice of others. And I would go as far as to say as actually sometimes we would not want to read God's advice to us in his word. He knows best. In John 14, verse 26, Jesus says to his disciples that the Holy Spirit will teach you all things and remind you of all Jesus has said. God knows. He is the best teacher, and his will is best. But if we trust him to be our teacher, are we content with not knowing some things? So if he knows best, if he knows what is good for us, maybe there are some things which are not good for us. There are some things that it's not good for us to know. And it's like that thing where, you know, parents don't tell their children everything, do they? Because sometimes the children just can't handle it. And we too can't handle it, as Nigel said in his bit about, you know, if we knew everything that God had for us in the days and years ahead, would we want to go down that path? Would we want that route? Maybe, or maybe not. If we knew the hardships that were ahead, would we still make those decisions? But if we are lacking, if there is something we are confused about or really think we need to know, we can come to God. We can ask him to bring light onto the situation or into that area of darkness that we need illuminating for us. He is the one that enables us to see the way forward. So this wonderful poem that Andrew and Tricia read, and it's a call for us to once again throw ourselves into the arms of God and trust him, well, very much with everything that we are. And it's summed up beautifully, isn't it, in Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. And I don't know about you, but when I used to read this thing about God making our paths straight, I always used to think of this idea of this kind of rocky, twisty, difficult to navigate path suddenly becoming easy. And actually, I discovered that it's not about that. It's actually about being able to see clearly. And it fits in beautifully with Nigel's example of the tunnel. If the tunnel that Nigel talked about was straight, you'd be able to see the end. Where would the trust be? If you had to walk through that tunnel and you were holding somebody's hand, if your hand was in the hand of the Lord and he was leading you in the darkness, but you could see where you're going, so it's fine. Where would the trust need to be? Where would the faith in God be? How would your relationship with God be affected? Because of human nature, it's very likely that we would think, I know it, I can do it, I don't need God. But it's the Lord who makes our paths straight as we trust in him with all of our heart. So the straight path is not about easiness. It's about being able to see clearly. And our eyes are impatient to see what is ahead, isn't it? Aren't they? But the Lord will reveal it in his time as we trust in him. So our final song today is all about standing in the love of God. And I'll just read a few lyrics from it. When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know, I won't be shaken. No, I will not be shaken. And again, it's not about life being nice or life being easy. But there are certain things which, no matter what comes at us with life, no matter what life throws at us, there are things that cannot be shaken. And they are God's love for you, God's love for me is unshakable. Nothing can separate us from his love. And the other is our salvation. Our salvation is secure in him. So let's come and worship God now with this song.